It was the third week of July, and the temperature on the south rim of the Grand Canyon had already broken 100 degrees by 9 in the morning. A woman in her early 60s stood at the Bright Angel trailhead in a neon pink top, telling two park rangers that she had been hiking longer than either of them had been alive. They told her to turn around. She started down anyway. By the time the canyon was finished with her, both rangers would understand that they had watched the whole thing happen from the only vantage point that mattered, the one where you can see the ending and cannot change it. What follows is a dramatization inspired by real events and real conditions in the inner gorge. The names and the people are composite. The canyon is exactly what it is. The two rangers stationed at the trailhead that morning had a combined 23 years on the corridor between them. They had pulled hikers off the Bright Angel in every condition a person can be in and still have a pulse, and a few in conditions where the pulse was the last thing left. The senior of the two had started his career on a fire crew before moving to search and rescue, and he had spent 11 summers watching the same story arrive at the same trailhead in slightly different clothes. He had a way of reading a hiker in the first 10 seconds, the pack, the water, the stride, the eyes, and he was almost never wrong. The younger ranger had learned from him, and between them, they knew the math of this place better than they knew their own birthdays. The Grand Canyon does not kill people on the way down. It kills them on the way up. Down is optional. Up is mandatory. And the gap between those two facts is where the bodies come from. She arrived a little after 8, alone, carrying a single-hand bottle of water and a phone she kept lifting to photograph the early light on the canyon walls. She moved well. That was the first thing the senior ranger noticed, and the thing that worried him most. She had the easy, confident stride of someone who had spent decades on trails, and none of the caution of someone who had spent any of those decades here. Strength on the rim is a liability, not an asset. The fittest hikers push the hardest, get the furthest down, and have the least left for the climb that actually counts. He had recovered people from this corridor who could have run a marathon at sea level the week before, and he had learned the hard way that the ones who scared him most were never the obviously unfit. They were the strong ones with no fear, because fear is the thing that turns people around in time. He walked over and gave her the warning he gave 40 times a day in July. The heat in the inner gorge would be 20 degrees hotter than the rim. There was no water on the trail until Indian Garden, 4.5 miles down and 3,000 feet below. The afternoon climb out would happen in the worst heat of the day on an exposed trail, with the sun directly overhead and the rock radiating back everything it had absorbed since dawn. He told her plainly that a day hike to the river and back in July was something the park actively warned against, that the signs at the trailhead were not decoration, that people died doing exactly what she was about to do, and that she should turn back now, while turning back still cost her nothing. He pointed at the warning sign as he said it, the one with the photograph of the strong young runner who never came home, and he watched her not look at it. She smiled at him the way people smile when they have already decided you are wrong. She told him she had hiked her whole life. She told him she had done Kilimanjaro, she had done the Inca Trail, she had done trails in her 60s that people half her age could not finish. And then she said the thing that the ranger would repeat later, the thing that sat at the center of the whole afternoon. She told him she was not too old for this, and she was tired of people deciding what she could and could not do because of a number on a birth certificate. The warning had stopped being about heat the moment it landed. It had become about her age and about proving a point, and a warning that turns into a point of pride is a warning that has already failed. She started down at 8:14 a.m. The younger ranger logged the time. Higher up, the calculation would change. Here is the part that matters, the part she could not feel, and the rangers could see from 100 feet away. The thing that kills people in the Grand Canyon is not the heat itself. It is the way the heat hides its progress. At altitude in dry desert air, your sweat evaporates the instant it leaves your skin. You never feel wet. You never feel like you are losing anything. The body sheds water at a rate the mind cannot track, a liter an hour, sometimes a liter and a half, vanishing into air so dry it takes the moisture before you know it is gone. Sodium drops with it. The blood thickens, the heart works harder to push it through narrower channels, and the harder it works, the more heat it makes, and the more heat it makes, the more water the body burns trying to shed it. It is a loop that only runs one direction. By the time thirst becomes urgent, you are already behind. By the time you feel genuinely bad, you are hours past the point where stopping would have saved you. The body has a few honest warning signs, and the desert mutes every one of them. There is no wet shirt to tell you how much you have sweated. There is no chill to tell you that you have stopped sweating at all. The canyon does its work quietly in a language the body cannot read until it is too late, and it presents the bill all at once at the bottom where there is no way out but up. She felt wonderful on the way down. Everyone does. The trail dropped away in long switchbacks. The temperature climbed with every 100 feet of descent, and gravity did all the work. She passed the first set of rest houses feeling strong, feeling vindicated, feeling like the rangers at the top were exactly the kind of small, cautious people she had spent her life proving wrong. She drank from her single bottle not because she was tracking it, but because she was thirsty, which is the wrong way to drink in the desert and the only way most people know. The bottle was half gone by Indian Garden. She refilled it there, the last reliable water on the trail, drank deep, topped it off, and kept going down toward the river. Because she had come to see the river, and a person who has hiked her whole life does not turn around 4.5 miles in. The water at Indian Garden felt like proof she had planned well. It was the last easy decision the canyon would let her make. The senior ranger back at the rim had already written her into the part of his mind that keeps track of the ones he is going to hear about. He had seen this exact profile too many times to count. Confident, fit, older, alone, underwatered, descending into the hottest part of the day with something to prove. He did not know her name. He knew her trajectory. He knew that somewhere below Indian Garden the trail keeps dropping, that the river is a tease that pulls strong hikers further than they should go, and that the walk back up from the river in July is one of the most lethal stretches of maintained trail in the United States. He radioed the Inner Canyon Ranger Station and told them what was coming down the trail, a description, a time, a feeling he could not log but had learned to trust. There was nothing else he could do. You cannot arrest an adult for hiking. You can warn them, and you can wait, and you can hope you are wrong, and he had stopped being wrong about this years ago. She reached the Colorado River a little before noon. The temperature down there had passed 115 degrees. The walls of the inner gorge are black Vishnu schist, nearly 2 billion years old, and they absorb heat all morning and breathe it back all afternoon, turning the bottom of the canyon into something closer to an oven than a valley. She sat by the water. She took her photographs. The river itself is a cruel comfort, cold and fast and undrinkable without treatment, close enough to touch and useless for cooling a body that needs to lose heat from the inside out. She felt for the first time a flicker of how far down she had come, and how much of the day was already gone. It was noon. The sun had reached the top of the sky and the shade was disappearing minute by minute. She was at the bottom of the deepest hole in North America, 9 miles of walking behind her, all of it downhill, and every step of the return waiting above her in the worst heat the canyon could produce. The river collected what the river always collects, the strong and the proud, and the ones who came too far. The walk back would do the rest. The climb out is where the arithmetic she had ignored at the trailhead came due all at once. The first mile up from the river felt hard but manageable. The second mile, her pace fell off a cliff. She was sweating without feeling it, losing water she could not replace fast enough, and her single bottle refilled at the river was already warm and already dropping. Her legs, which had carried her confidently down 9 miles of trail, began to feel like they belonged to someone else. She stopped more often. She told herself it was the view. It was not the view. It was the first stage of heat exhaustion settling into a body that had spent its entire reserve getting to a place it now had to climb out of. And the canyon walls had begun their long afternoon exhale, pushing heat at her from every direction at once. By 2 in the afternoon, she had made it back to the stretch below Indian Garden, and the symptoms had stopped being deniable. Her head pounded with each step. The skin on her arms had gone strange and prickling, her stomach had turned, and she had stopped sweating as much as she should, which is the body running out of water to sweat with, and which is the quiet line between heat exhaustion and the thing that comes after it. She sat in a sliver of shade against the canyon wall and did not get up for a long time. Other hikers passed her. One asked if she was all right. She said she was fine. She had said she was fine to the rangers at the top, and she said it to a stranger at the bottom, and the word meant less every time she used it. She was 4.5 miles and 3,000 vertical feet below the rim in 115-degree heat, with a body that was beginning to fail and a will that would not let her admit it. This is the cruelty of the experience trap, and it is what the rangers understood that she did not. Everything that had kept her safe for 40 years of hiking was working against her now. Her fitness let her get further into danger than a weaker person could have. Her experience told her she could handle conditions she had never actually faced, because no trail in her life had ever been this, a vertical mile of climbing in heat that the human body is simply not built to shed fast enough. Her pride would not let her be the woman who got turned around by a heat warning, because being turned around would mean the rangers were right, and being right about her was the same as being right about her age. So she kept moving up, slowly, a few steps at a time, because the alternative was an admission she could not make. The canyon does not care what you have to prove. It only measures water and heat and time, and by mid-afternoon, her numbers had all gone the wrong direction. A pair of hikers coming down found her sometime after 3, sitting where the trail switchbacks below the rim, confused and unable to stand without help. She did not know how long she had been there. She was no longer fully tracking the conversation, answering questions a beat too late, repeating herself, her words beginning to slur at the edges. Heat exhaustion had crossed into something far more dangerous, the stage where the body can no longer cool itself and the core temperature begins to climb past what the brain can tolerate. Above 104 degrees of internal temperature, the body starts to come apart from the inside, and the mind goes before the body does. They gave her their water. They got her into what shade the wall could offer. They radioed up. And the call that came down to the inner canyon station was the call the senior ranger at the trailhead had been quietly expecting since 8:14 that morning, when a confident woman in a pink top told him she was not too old for this and started down. The rangers reached her as fast as the terrain and the heat allowed, which in the inner gorge in July is never fast enough. A rescue in this part of the canyon is not a matter of carrying someone to a road. There is no road. There is only the trail she had walked down, 3,000 feet of it, and the heat that had broken her was now working on everyone trying to save her. They got fluids into her. They got her flat, got her cooled the only ways the canyon allows: wet cloth, shade, the slow, patient work of pulling a temperature down degree by degree, while the rock around them refused to cool at all. The younger ranger had hiked down from the rim to meet the team, and he was the one who recognized her. The pink top, the description that had come over the radio that morning, the woman who had told them she was not too old. He did not say it out loud. There was nothing to say. A helicopter cannot simply pluck a person off the inner gorge in the heat of a July afternoon. The air is too thin, too hot, the rotors too compromised by the temperature, and the window for a flight is narrow and unforgiving. Everything about saving a life down there is slower and harder than the thing that took it, and the canyon knows this, and the canyon counts on it. She did not make it out. The heat had been working on her for hours before anyone reached her, accumulating in a body that kept telling itself it was fine while it crossed one threshold after another. And the human body, once it passes a certain core temperature for a certain length of time, does not always come back no matter what anyone does. By the time help arrived, the damage was already set, put in motion at the trailhead, and finished on the climb. She did not have the water or the margin to complete. She died below the rim of the Grand Canyon on a July afternoon, in the exact stretch of trail the senior ranger had warned her about 7 hours earlier, in the heat he had described to her almost word for word. The two rangers from the trailhead heard how it ended later that day. The senior ranger had logged the warning. He had logged the time she started down. He had radioed ahead. He had done every single thing his training and his 11 summers on the corridor told him to do, and none of it had been enough, because none of it had ever included the one power he did not have, which is the power to physically stop an adult who has decided she knows better. That is the position the canyon puts its rangers in, and it is an impossible one. You carry the responsibility for people who give you no authority over them. You see the ending from the trailhead. You deliver the warning that would save them, in plain words, with a sign and a photograph and 11 years of dead strangers behind your voice. And then you watch them walk past you into the thing you just described, and you go back to your post and you wait for the radio call you already know is coming. He had told her the heat would be 20 degrees hotter at the bottom. It was. He had told her there was no water until Indian Garden. There wasn't. He had told her the climb out would happen in the worst heat of the day, and that people died doing exactly this. They did, and she had. Every word he said at the trailhead came true in the order he said it, and the only thing he got wrong was believing, for the length of a single conversation, that being right might be enough to change her mind. He would work that trailhead again the next morning and the morning after, and he would give the same warning to the next strong, confident hiker who had already decided he was small and cautious and wrong, and some of them would listen and some of them wouldn't, and the canyon would go on sorting them the way it always has. The deadliest distance in the Grand Canyon isn't measured in miles. It's measured in the gap between the moment a hiker should turn around and the moment they finally admit they can't go on. And for a woman determined to prove she wasn't too old, that gap was the entire width of the canyon. The rangers knew the size of it the moment she started down. She learned it on the way back up, in the heat, alone, far past the point where knowing could save her. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more, click on your screen.